Okay, we are in Jeremiah chapter 4. And although Jeremiah is a rather large book, we are making some extreme headway over these weeks. I feel like there's so much information. I feel like there is information even I have to go back and look over or revisit as we're going through this because it's so rich. This week, we're going to do something, I don't know if it's necessarily a little different, but it'll be a different kind of integration of information. So we have a couple of word studies, brief, that we're going to touch on so that we can better frame the rest of the book of Jeremiah. In the beginning, we gave an introduction of what was happening, time period, who Jeremiah was, who the king was during this time, what he's saying. We've had like background information time. And this week is not really any different, but we're going to focus in on one key subject, and it's going to kind of be a theme that runs throughout the rest of our time in Jeremiah. It's something you're going to see over and over and over and over and over again. We're going to look at, I have this like brief YouTube video clip I'm going to show you guys at some point. I think it's really cool. It gives some really good insight, in my opinion, to part of the topic we're looking at. And the last part, just so you're not like, wait, did she just, kind of just like give up and just, read the rest? The last part is Jeremiah's words. And I can't do Jeremiah better than Jeremiah, nor would I ever try. So the last part of this lesson where Jeremiah is in the text speaking, I'm going to just read that because everything we're going to do up until that point is going to be context and understanding for actually what is being said. It's going to like, I don't know, in my opinion, it makes it like really come alive and live. So last week we covered, we ended with chapter 3, getting up to the point that like, where their heart's really in this whole turning away. And so this week we're going to focus in on a warning before it goes to your heart. And it's very interesting because we use that word heart a lot. There's a couple other words we're going to touch on today, like abomination, thrown around a lot. And when we think abomination, we normally function within a couple of contexts, but those contexts actually exist in a wider understanding. So we're going to look at that today as well. And then the part that I told you, I'm going to show you a YouTube video, we're going to get into some kind of technical things, is the brain-heart connection. Because a lot of us think about heart and we have a particular connotation that runs through our minds. And whenever we have a thought, definition, experience that is inconsistent with Torah, inconsistent with Tanakh, inconsistent with the cultural and contextual mind of the writer, the prophet, and even other readers, it distorts kind of how we see things. And we fail to be able to put ourselves in the position for the necessary correction. And we can normally see it on other people based upon how we define that. So my hope today is that through the definition that the word sits at home, it sits within us, not in a way to leave you in a negative, but to help us move toward a positive. So that's the point. So we're going to get into some scientific and some kind of technical things. I think it's cool because today you're going to see how science, if you will, and Torah have never been disconnected. If you're looking at the observable world, then you're looking at Yah's Torah. And when people seek to explain it, they're explaining to you back Torah. They're explaining you back law. The only difference is you don't study the Torah of the universe, so you don't understand it when it comes back to you. But if we were better at observing and better at looking and better at being mindful of our environment, then the Torah would come alive. And there are some examples of that. Solomon says, observe the ant, right? Observe the things happening around you. Why? Because though they be little, they do this in this particular way. And it's supposed to show you something about yourself. Anything that catches your attention is what I would call on your radar. It's something that you're probably supposed to be seeing. It's something that internally, yeah, it's probably supposed to be working with you on. And unfortunately, what happens is we don't follow our gut instinct. We follow our own personal authority within. And that authority within, unfortunately, is manipulated by what the world tells us to see. And we manipulate it by what we choose to see and what we watch and what we hear and what we look at social media and even what we hear people say about the Bible, so that when we come in contact with truth, unfortunately, or even the truth of the world or the environment, Our eyes can't see and our ears can't hear because our heart is muffled. And so that's kind of like the direction we're going in today. All right, let's open up the text. We'll start there. Of course, I'm not going to go anywhere else first. So Jeremiah chapter 4 opens in the same manner as everything we've seen up until this point, right? He's not changing. Yah is speaking to Israel. Yah is speaking to his people, trying to get them to turn away. And he's appealing to their hearts. He's appealing to their love because judgment is coming if they don't turn. And unfortunately, because we got the prophecies, we know they're not going to. That's what we know on our side, right? We got the spoiler alert, if you will. They don't. And so the preaching and the prophecies often seem in vain when you sit on this side, right? You're like, well, what was all that about if they weren't going to? Because of the love of Yah. Because not everybody doesn't turn. There's always a remnant, right? But Yah is giving everyone the opportunity. And so it seems like it's kind of like belabored. Like if this was a book or a story you were reading and it wasn't historical context, you'd be like, well, I keep reading the same thing over and over again. Like this is one repetitive story, like over and over again. Return, put away, come back, return. You're like, can we just skip all this and get to the next part? And unfortunately, that's how a lot of people read the Bible. They get to like, we know like the fun stories. So you guys know, like, we know, and I said to you guys, but most people know like the pet verses when you get to the parts like, oh, okay, he's gonna give you a heart of flesh, a heart of stone, but you don't know how he got from there. 26 chapters or 20 something chapters later, there was a lot of stuff that happened in between. And this is just that in between state where it seems like the same information, but what I'm going to show you today is that Torah, Tanakh, the word, always has a practical context, because when these people are talking, and if we can just get this through our head, they were infinitely smarter than we are. Like just on a pure connection, they had their own land, they understood the agrarian context of things, they also understood the function of the body. And then on top of that, these prophets, preachers, teachers that we read and we get our learning from, they were sold out to just this. This is what they did. Listen to Yah, observe. Like Jeremiah's job is to see. So when he brings something out, when you see what he sees today, you're going to be like, that's all in that. And I hope it gives you a deeper appreciation for the work that goes into those who handle the word. It's not just like willy-nilly and it's like, oh, this just happened and then the spirit came over me. It's also work for that person. That is their work. This is Jeremiah's work, is to see these things and to make it make sense. And so what we read on the page at first glance may not necessarily make sense. And that's why scripture says you have teachers, people that bring it kind of out so you can see it the way it would have been seen naturally had we not, and if we did not have all of these blocks in place because of diaspora, captivity, sin, darkness, wickedness, and just pure ignorance sometimes. So chapter 4 opens up with, if you will return, O Israel. Like, here he goes again, begging this wayward woman to come back, begging this wayward bride to come back. It just opens up like that. You'd be like, ain't you tired of asking? So once again, another plea. What often happens with people, and I hear people who don't read the scripture, of course, this is more or less their reasoning. This evil God just punishes people. And he just does this to people. And why wouldn't, after you read, we're only 3 chapters into Jeremiah, how many times Yah was like, come back. Come on, I see you. I understand you. I know. Come back. People wouldn't have that if they actually read it. And so a lot of times we know when a person is not read, when that's their like resolve. God is mean. God doesn't care about people. He doesn't give people chances. Like, wow, we're only 4 chapters in. This is going to go on for this whole book, by the way. 4 chapters in, and I mean, we can probably stop counting at this point how many times he's like, come on, come home. I know what you've been doing. I know you're whoredom. I know you're going after other gods. I know you've been doing this. come on back, if you will return. So here we are, chapter 4. If you will return, O Israel, saith Yah, return unto me. So he's like, don't just turn. You know, sometimes people say, I'm just gonna stop. Like, yeah, stopping is part of it, but Yah's like, I don't want you to stop doing it. I want you to stop doing it and start doing what is functional. A lot of times we have trouble keeping up with the things that we want to do in life because we stop doing one thing and we don't replace it with something that is positive. That you can't do that. So Yah understands human nature. So he's like, come back, stop doing that, and return to me. And he says, here's our first word for the day. If you will put away your abominations out of my sight, then you will not remove. In English, I tell you, it sounds like bad English because it is bad English, but it's perfect Hebrew. So let's look at abomination. I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and I'm going to write it out. Let me grab my paper. I give you both words. And I'm going to write it out for those of you all over 3 different ways, and I'm going to show you it's all the same definition. All right. So the first word that we have is the word, it's looks like shakates, so shokates in Hebrew, and it's spelled, I'm going to write it in paleo. And sure got the right word. All right. Okay, then we have T. All right. I'm always bad with the paleo. Okay. So in Hebrew, this word is shokate, and it looks like this. And it's a shin, a kof, and a sadi sofit. That's the word there. And the word literally means, let me fix this one. For those of you who are trying to write this down, I help you. All right. The word literally means detestable to you. So when you see, if you go through and you read scripture and it's like, this should be abomination to you. This particular food should be abomination to you. The idols of these nations shall be abomination. This is abominable. This is the word for how it is to you. So people always ask a question, right? People say, pigs are an abomination. No, the carcass of the pig for food is abominable to you. Pigs are functional. You don't get rid of pigs on the planet, right? People say, shrimp are an abomination to you. In the ocean, they have a function. So this is that word as it pertains to a thing being abominable or being disgusting, detestable to you. It's not food for you. It's not a part of your, lifestyle. The idols, they're abominable to you. As Israel, you're set apart and you don't partake in these things. They are an abomination. They're disgusting. They're gross. They are abhorrent. You should feel like ugh when they are in your sight. They should literally make your stomach churn. That's what this particular word means. And this is how, in general, abomination is used when Yah is talking about something and describing how we should interact with it. Okay. So in the text what we're just reading, he said, put away your abominations. He's like, put away the things, right, that you already know based upon the law are abominable to you. You can't have these things in your possession. They can't be a part of your lifestyle. They are perfectly normal things, right? Trees are normal.
But what you're doing with them, you've now made this thing abominable and detestable, because you're doing what people have done to participate in pagan worship, which the scripture calls whoredom, spiritual fornication, so forth and so on. This cannot be a part of your lifestyle. All right, that's that word. All right, now let's look at the next word. This is another word that's used throughout scripture for the word abomination, and the root word is tav, ayin, bet. In the picture form, you have like two cross sticks, an eye, and a house. And then in paleo, it looks like this. All right, same word, same definition. This particular word means to become as one in Yah's eyes with the thing that is abominable, thus making you an abomination. So this is what you see when it's talked about laying with beasts. Every time this particular word is used, what follows it is, and you will be cut off. If you do this, you will be cut off. If you participate with this, you will be cut off. If you lay with mankind like this, you will be cut off. If you lay with the beast, you will be cut off. If you lay with your spouse like this, you will be cut off. This is this particular word. It's different. It's the difference between that thing is nasty. Don't touch it, don't. And then you then engage in that way and you become that kind of nasty to me. I'm going to cut you off. That's the difference between these two words. It's not that the meaning of I guess it would say, it's not that the abomination is different. It's your interaction with the abomination that changes Yah's interaction with you based upon your abominable act. What's interesting about this particular chapter is that Yah has not yet called them abominable. He's saying, get rid of the abomination from in the midst of you. And so the reason why I titled this the way I did is a warning before it goes to your heart. See, Yah knows every intricate level of our sin. So what he's saying is, you are getting ready to be vomited out of the land because you're getting ready to reach the fullness of your sin, like the other nations did, right? You're doing the abominable and thus becoming an abomination to be cast out. Let's look at Deuteronomy 7:25. It'll kind of bring this around. In Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 25, Yah talks about his reaction, if you will, to this type of detestability, if you use that word. All right, so 7:25. Okay, I have to go back. Okay, let's just go back to verse 1. Let's just read a little bit. When Yah your Elohim shall bring thee into the land whither you goest to possess it, and has cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than you. And when Yah your Elohim shall deliver them before you, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. You shall not make covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Neither shall you make marriages with them. Your daughters shall not be given unto their sons. Your sons shall be given to the daughters, vice versa. For they will turn away your son from following me, that they will serve other Elohim. So will the anger of Yah be kindled against you and destroy you suddenly. But thus shall ye deal with them. You shall destroy their altars and break down their images and cut down their groves and burn their graven images with fire. For you are a holy people unto Yah, your Elohim, and Yah, your Elohim, has chosen you to be a special people unto himself above all the people that are upon the face of the earth. That should make you want to do that. Like, wow. Yah did not set his love upon you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any people, for you were the fewest of all the people. But because Yah loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he swore to your fathers, hath Yah brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you out of the house of bondmen from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that Yah, your Elohim, he is Elohim, the faithful Elohim, which keepeth covenant mercy with them that love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations, and repayeth them that hate him to their face to destroy them. He will not be slack to him that hates him. He will repay him to his face. You shall therefore keep the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which I command you this day to do them. Wherefore it should come to pass, if ye hearken to these judgments and keep and do them, that Yah your Elohim will keep unto thee the covenant and the mercy which he swore to your fathers. And he will love you and bless you and multiply you. He will also bless the fruit of your womb, the fruit of your land, your corn, your wine, your oil, your flocks, your cattle, in the land which he swore to your fathers to give you. You shall be blessed above all people, and there shall not be male or female barren among you or among your cattle. And Yah will take away from you all sickness, and will put none of the evil diseases of Egypt, which you know, upon thee, but will lay them up for all that hate thee. And you shall consume all the people which Yah your Elohim shall deliver to you. Your eyes shall have no pity unto them, neither shall you serve their gods, for that will be a snare unto you. If you will say in your heart, these nations are more than I, how can I dispossess them? Don't be afraid of them, but remember what Yah did unto Pharaoh and unto Egypt. The great temptations which your eyes saw, and the signs and the wonders, and the mighty hand and the outstretched arm, whereby Yah your Elohim brought you out, so shall Yah your Elohim do unto the people of whom you are afraid. Moreover, Yah your Elohim will send the hornet among them until they that are left and hide themselves from thee be destroyed. You shall not be afraid of them, for Yah your Elohim is among you, a mighty Elohim and terrible. And Yah your Elohim will put out these nations before you little by little. Thou mayest not consume them at once, lest the beasts of the field increase upon thee. So even there, it's like, it's precise. But Yah your Elohim shall deliver them unto thee, and shall destroy them with a mighty destruction until they be destroyed. And he shall deliver their kings into your hand, and thou shalt destroy their name from under heaven. There shall no man be able to stand before thee until you have destroyed them. Here we are, full circle. The graven images of their gods shall ye burn with fire. Thou shalt not desire the silver or gold that is on them, nor take it unto thee, lest you be ensnared therein, for it is an abomination to Yah your Elohim. Neither shalt thou bring an abomination into your house, lest thou be a cursed thing like it. But thou shalt utterly detest it, and thou shalt utterly abhor it, for it is a cursed thing. All of these words, like abhor, there it is, ta'av, detest, shakates, the same word that I told you. You shall detest it, and it shall be pushed out from you. So you have these two words actually used in this sentence, I give you the whole background. His context is important. Yeah, it's like, look, I told you how to view this thing. I told you how to view these people. I told you how to view their idols. You shall detest it. And then abhor it means to put it away from you. So what happens when a person becomes abominable is that they did not detest it, and they became an abhorrence like the thing that they were supposed to detest. Now you get put away like it, like the verse says, lest thou be a cursed thing like it. The proximity and the engagement with the detestable makes us an abhorrence to Yah. And that's what people are trying to say, I believe, when they talk about bringing idols into your house or doing these things. You have now cursed your home. It's that simple. Like, it's like, oh, it's so pretty. I want the gold and the silver like the other nations, and I'm going to decorate and do these things like them. Yeah, it's like you're making your home detestable. And now you've made it an abhorrence. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to literally remove it from my sight. See, people are so used to like destruction. We're like, oh, I'm going to get sick. And Yah, what if Yah just takes his eye off of you? What if Yah just stops remembering that you exist? What if Yah just says, you want to do that? I can't, me and that, we can't be together. So I have to distance myself from you. You have now made yourself an abomination and you've become like that idol. And now I have to remove myself from you. So Yah is asking Israel to detest it and cleave to him. Let's look at, and I'm going to kind of move from one thing to another, and I'm going to come back around to that thing of the heart. Let's look at what sin does. Two major sins, right? I mean, three definitely, but they all come from one root. Pride, of course, is the root of all evil. It's the idea that I'm puffed up, I'm high, I'm lofty, I can't be told anything, I'm just going to behave like I want to. But within that sin are two others, which are rebellion and stubbornness. Because Yah puts these two things together. He's like, he talks about the heart, which we're going to get to, but he says, because you're stiff-necked, right? And the idea of stiff-neckedness is a hard head. It's hard-headed. What does hard-headed come from? Rebellion and stubbornness. We're going to look at what scripture says about rebellion and stubbornness, because we're going to get a better idea of what Yah is seeing, if you will, when he looks at us, when he looks at us, if you will. And I love that we get to go back.
We're going to go back to 1 Samuel chapter 15. A lot of people read this story and have a lot more sense today in the context that we're talking about. So in 1 Samuel chapter 15, if you don't remember, right before this, Samuel tells Saul, this is Saul the king, right? Saul is a perfect example of somebody who became an abhorrence. He just went off. He became, in so many ways, his own idol. And so a lot of times when people look at the abomination of idols, and we talk about catch it before it gets to your heart, what I was, we kind of titled this, is that which is detestable, when we don't detest it, it then becomes a part of us. And it moves from being an idol outside to an idol inside. And that's when it becomes dangerous. Check this out. So in 1 Samuel 15, Samuel said unto Saul, Yah sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now hearken therefore unto the voice of the words of Yah. So he's going to go through, he's going to give them this thing about Amalek. He says, look here, this is what you're going to do. It's going to be very reminiscent of what we just read in Deuteronomy. Now go kill Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have. Is this not exactly in line with what was in Deuteronomy? Kill them a little bit by little bit. I'll tell you when to do it. This is how you're going to do it. Don't desire anything that they have, right? So he says, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman and infant and suckling and ox and sheep and camel and donkey, right? When people read this, they go, oh my gosh, he said slay all of those people. But if you got context and you read why Yah said to do it just like we did, then you're like, makes sense. He said, why? They're going to turn the hearts of your sons and daughters. He gave a list of 7 particular people. He didn't say everybody on the planet, but these 7, they're a mess. Don't take anything that is theirs. Don't take their children. Don't take their gold. Nothing. Destroy it all. They've done the most. So he tells them this. Let's go down. I'm just going to skip. If you don't know 1 Samuel 15, it's on YouTube. You can watch the whole 1 Samuel 15 if you want the fat story fat. This is going to be the fat story slim. So we're going to go down to verse 23, right? So we'll go a little bit earlier. Let's go verse 18.
And Yah sent thee on a journey and said, so this is Samuel talking to Saul, because Saul, if you follow the story, he doesn't do what Samuel tells him that Yah told him to do. He says, wherefore then did you not, why didn't you obey the voice of Yah, but you flew upon the spoil and did evil in the sight of Yah? Peep Saul's response. Saul said to Samuel, yeah, I obeyed the voice of Yah and have gone the way which Yah sent me, and brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took the spoil of the sheep and the oxen and the chief of things which should have been utterly destroyed to sacrifice them. We were going to give them unto Yah in Gilgal. And Samuel said, have Yah as great a delight in burnt offerings and sacrifice as in obedience to the voice of Yah? See that mind. I want you to just keep this person in your mind. Yah told him to do something, literally and exactly like he said, and gave him reason, right? And his response was, I did exactly what Yah said. And the people, they saw the spoil that, well, I know it was supposed to be destroyed. I know, but they're going to sacrifice that to Yah. This is just sheep and oxen. And Yah is like, So how much more detestable is it when we take idols from pagan nations and say, oh no, I'm just taking. Is this not the same mind, right, as many of us were and how a lot of people are? Look at Yah's response, just in case the person says, no, I'm doing this. We have a perfect example in scripture where Yah responds to a person who has this type of mindset. Have Yah as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices and festivals and worship, right? As in the obedience to his voice. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice. Sacrifice is a form of worship, right? Obey is better than the worship you want to give me. And to hearken than the fat of rams. He's like, your obedience would have been greater than any sacrifice you could ever give me. So then he goes on. This is the part, verse 23. For rebellion. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. And stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. So people go, I don't do witchcraft. I don't have iniquity. I'm not an idolater. I'm not a pagan. Rebellion is just like it. Rebellion is like it, and stubbornness is as iniquity. The idea here is so interesting because the word for rebellion is bitterness. And bitterness is not a byproduct of obedience. Bitterness is a byproduct of the consequences of your own disobedience or somebody else's disobedience. And bitterness is literally the ultimate end of bitterness is to have no rest and to become insane. Well, what ended up happening to Saul? His rebellion, which in the Hebrew is the same word mara, for bitterness, led to his literal insanity. When people say let go and don't be bitter, it's because Yah understands the seed of bitterness and what the ultimate end of it is. He's like, take that out. We're going to get to that in just a second. Believe me, all this is going to make sense if it doesn't already. Bitterness also, like witchcraft, which is the word kasim, it will blind you. Witchcraft is the idea that even with reality in front of you, you can't see truth. And it becomes witchcraft. It's like sleight of hand, where your brain and your reality is twisted because of this bitterness that's inside. And if it doesn't, it's not going to stop there. It leads to narcissism. This is the word that's thrown around all the time. And it's funny because it's really misused. Biblically, narcissism is wrathful pride. I'm so proud that I no longer can see my ways and I become wrathful when somebody tries to point them out to me.
because I'm bitter and blind. That's the root of it. So when you're dealing with a person, the reason why you can't get through to a person who is quote unquote narcissistic is because they refuse to see themselves. And you trying to show them themselves only makes them more upset because they don't want to see themselves. They have made a decision that their reality is the only reality. It's like talking to a person who is literally insane. I have created my own reality. And this changes their perception, which then they have to try to change your perception of them so that they don't have to live in the reality that they know is a reality. That's why there's gaslighting. I have to make you see me like I see me. So I have to continually put you in a position to where you have a distorted reality by my witchcraft that I've used on myself. I'm now going to use on you so that I can be comfortable in my own insanity because I'm not going to change. The other word here is the word stubbornness. Stubbornness. And this idea of stubbornness is literally insubordination. Insubordination. One who is resistant to the pricking and prodding and the urging away from sin toward righteousness. Stubbornness. And it is as iniquity and idolatry. Why? Because a person who is like this has set up idols. The word here for idolatry that is used in conjunction with stubbornness is teraphim. It's the type of idol, and it's in scripture, it's used as household idols. If you look it up, it'll give you a list of all the time it says, and these household idols. Why? These are idols that are in the house. Because remember, you have idols in the grove, you have idols in the altar, but then you have these idols that you keep close to you. Rebellion becomes a household idol. It becomes an idol in your heart. And guess what rebellion does? You think that by being rebellious and resistant, you're somehow helping and healing yourself by setting up all these blocks and these things, or literally just being obstinate because you're angry, upset, or because of bitterness, right? And eventually, this rebellion leaves you empty inside. The rebellion leaves you empty. Your sin becomes, when it becomes a household idol, right? When it becomes this rebellion, the reason why it becomes idolatry is because it becomes an object of reverence. How we hold on to our hurt and our pain like a household idol, not wanting to let it go, and then constantly feeding it by allowing those triggers to remain, which are like offerings to this idol. It's like an offering to this idol of stubbornness. And guess what? After a while, you become empty. Where now you're giving all your energy to this stubbornness, to this teraphim, to this household idol, which is literally you, that you're empty and you're nothing. Nothing's left. The word here, the word is actually aven, which is like nothing. There's nothing left. And so at the end, it becomes abominable. Then the person then becomes this way. And why? It says, because you have rejected the word of Yah. Because you have rejected the word of Yah, in this case, Yah rejects him from being king. But you can put whatever in there. Because you have rejected the word of Yah, Yah is rejected. I got a verse for you. Let's go to, I believe it is, let me double check really quick. I believe it's Proverbs 28. And we're going to go to verse 8. Verse 9. He says, he that turneth away his ear, right? Ended off with rejecting. You rejected the word of Yah. You rejected hearing the word of Yah. He rejects you. It's not something that was just for that one time. Oh, he was just talking to Saul because Saul was so wicked. No. He that turns away his ear from hearing the law, even his prayer shall be an abomination. Your prayer is detestable now. Your prayer is not just detestable, though. It now has moved into the space of abhorrence where it doesn't even reach me. I'm not even an earshot of it. that is dangerous. Even more so, let's read verse 10. Whoso calls the righteous to go astray in an evil way, he shall find himself into his own pit, but the upright shall have good things in possession. It says, so the idea of then to teach a person that you don't have to keep it. And the person, most of the time when you start teaching a person that they don't have to keep the law, it's because they came to you and said, I think I should be following and listening. Nobody just outright. Most of the time, the conversation comes after a person says, you know, I should really be listening to what Yah has to say. And then a person says, strive for that, because that's what righteousness is. Do dysfunction and don't listen to him at all. That's a pit for that person. There's destruction that comes with that. But I want you to focus in on this part, which is he that turns away his ear from hearing the law, even his prayer becomes an abomination. Now let's go back. We're going to take a journey back to Jeremiah 4. Yah says, if thou will return on, O Israel, saith Yah, return unto me, and if you will put away your abominations. So he's like, put away the things that are detestable out of my sight, then shalt thou not remove. Now I'm going to give you, now this is going to make sense. He says, then I won't move you into the state of the other type of abomination and move you out of my sight. Put that out of my sight so I don't have to remove you out of my sight. That's that verse. I know that was a long way for that, but that's literally what that means. And he says, and thou shalt swear. So he's like, you're going to literally proclaim it and say it. You're going to make a statement that Yah liveth in truth, in judgment, and in righteousness. Yah is literally a part of all of that. He says, and the nations shall bless themselves in him. So when you put this away, you bring it back where now Yah's going to see you being functional. You're going to be functional in truth. They're going to see Yah's judgment and how he has now redeemed you. And he's going to see Yah's righteousness and how you to return and you've become righteous. And now nations are going to bless Yah. Beautiful, right? And in him shall they glory. Oh no, not in the people. Like after all this, they're not going to glory in us. No, he's like, this is all done so that in him, in Yah, they glory. And the word here for glory is not the word that we think about glory, but it literally is hallel. They're going to praise Yah for who he is when you do what you're supposed to do. So what's even worse about our rebellion and our stubbornness is that people stop praising Yah because of our actions. So we take, like the adversary, Yah's praise away from him when we act the way we act. And then we can say, so he tried to be up in heaven and he thought he was like Yah and he wanted to be worshiped like him and he took away. You're like, wait, is that me? Is that me doing what I snub and turn up my nose at Satan for doing? Oh, it makes you go and be like, wow, okay. If that wasn't enough that Jeremiah said, here goes this next part. For thus saith Yah to the men of Judah and Jerusalem. I'm going to put us all in here, but specifically, the reason why I talk to the men is because as the men go, so goes everyone else. It's not the other way around. Because guess what? I believe women are natural reciprocators in their natural state. Now, once you add in, obviously, the curse of Deuteronomy 28 and wickedness and other things, of course. But what Yah is saying is the men are involved too. It's not like, oh, my wife just does this weird thing. No, you let her. No, you're not leading your house. How are there these idols? How are there these things? And you're not saying, no, you'd be better off saying, if you want the idol, I'm be like, yeah, and you and this idol can be outside, but you're not bringing it in here. But there's a whole bunch of disorder, and order begins with the head. And it's interesting because Yah doesn't deal with just this brute force order. I think this is like one of the most beautiful passages, in my opinion, because he speaks to the men in a way that the men can understand. Isn't that so much like, yeah, he has spoken to them in a way they can understand. He says, break up your fallow ground and sow not among thorns. The word here, to break literally means that he's going to tell you what the fallow ground is. But the word here is it's virgin soil. It's soil that's actually never been sown in before. And he's going to connect this ground to their hearts later. But in this case, he's going to deal with their bodies. But this idea of this fallow ground is their heart and their mind. I'm going to use that in a second. He says, it's never been sown. It's not there. Like, we think because of the outward actions that people's internals have changed. But more often than not, it's easier to do the outside work. It's easier to do the outside thing than to allow the transformation to come from the inside. So he's like, break up the fallow ground, do the work so that when the seeds are sown, they're not sown amongst thorns. Well, we know the parable that Hamashiach gives, right? When it's sown amongst thorns, you'll try to do good and they'll be choked out. So he's like, I don't want that to happen. So don't just break up the ground, but you're going to put the ground into a place of proper cultivation. And of course, we know that that's something that Yah has to do. He said, don't sow in this soil that's mixed. That's also an agrarian concept, but also a physical concept. We talked about earlier how if a woman goes and she's with another and he divorced her and that whole thing, and then he can't take her back. Why? Because it's an abomination. It's detestable. You don't sow seed where another man has sown his seed. So he's saying, break up the virgin soil. He uses this word, right? And don't sow amongst others. You understand that if I gave it to you agrarian. So he's like, don't be like a virgin to me, like you want a woman to be a virgin to you. Do you want her letting some other man sow behind where you sown? Sowing diverse seeds, sowing children that you don't know which one was yours? He's like, you understand that concept as a man, right? So he's literally, Yah speaks to the natural things. He's like, you understand your body works. And this is not the first time this is done, because literally, if you go all the way to the Brit Kadashah, Paul does the same thing. He says, love your wives as a weaker vessel. Would you want somebody to hit you in the nuts? Like, then handle her the same way you would handle a delicate vessel. You have more concern of your member than you do over her, and she's supposed to be of your own body. You're supposed to see her the same way. I mean, like, it's just plain. People understand things. If you're talking to a person that likes football, use football terms. If you're talking to a person that likes basketball, use basketball terms. If you're talking to a person that likes to cook, use cooking terms. If you're talking to an agrarian people who their whole lives were the ground and their family, you're going to speak to them in those terms, and you're going to make it make sense for them. So then verse 4, he says, circumcise yourselves to Yah and take away the foreskin of your heart, ye men of Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem. This is like the first part of many where he's going to talk about this heart and the circumcision of the heart. But Jeremiah is not the originator of the circumcision of the heart. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter, I believe it's chapter 10. Grab my notes. Yes, Deuteronomy chapter 8. I believe it's around verse 6. Here we go. Says, circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart and be no more stiff-necked. For Yah your Elohim is El of Els and master or Adon of Adon, and a great Elohim and a mighty and a terrible, which regardeth not persons nor taketh reward. He doth execute the judgment of the fatherless and widow and love the stranger and giving him food and raiment. So you see, that idea was supposed to shoot you to a whole idea of who Yah was. But he's like, circumcise the foreskin of your heart. Speaking to a person that would understand that. Why? That was a regular practice amongst the men during that time. It's a regular practice. We're not going to go into the whole circumcision thing. Actually, we have a video that I haven't shared with all of you, so I'll share that one on circumcision. But I will get into this. The idea of circumcision, while it has obviously over time, what's the word I'm thinking? Hygienic properties that are good, and amongst other things, the real purpose of it is that it is a sign. It is a sign in the flesh between that male and that family. And yeah, so all the other things we can theorize around them, but it is a sign of covenant in the flesh. The circumcision of the heart is a sign of covenant spiritually, and it's seen in one's actions. You had people who were circumcised in the flesh, but their hearts were untilled. They were virgin. The action of covenant had never reached their hearts. The heart is an interesting part of the body. And it's interesting because when we think about heart, we often think about just the blood pumper, or we think about emotion. This is where that video part I'm gonna bring in. It's interesting because the heart and the brain are connected. And in a Hebraic sense, the heart is defined as the mind. The brain, right, and the heart connected really make up what the mind is. In Hebrew, the word for heart is lev or levav. And so it's lamed, bet, that's paleo. You have lamed, and then bet, that's a pictograph. And then you have lamed, bet, that's in modern script. Word means across the board. You get the meaning from here. First two letters give you the definition. The shepherd staff represents authority, and the bet represents house in. So the mind or the heart represents the authority within. The authority within. That's what it is. So where does this idea of authority within come from? We don't know ourselves like Yah knows this. I have this thing I'm going to read in a second, and you're going to crack up laughing like I did. It almost made me a little sad too. But I want you to look at this idea of the brain, right, controls the heart, and the heart communicates with the brain, literally activating what we call our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous systems. Give you this like really like scientific reading, and then we're going to listen to this video. It's going to make sense. And then I'm going to give you this crazy scientific reading, and I'm going to get to my point, and we'll jump back into the text. So in the same way, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems acts obediently and automatically to keep you alive. In like manner, when our authority within is connected to Yah, we will act in an automatic way to keep our soul from Sheol and sin. The body is literally like made in a way so that every neuron obeys the law and it functions in alignment with systems. In the same way, Torah hardwires us back to our Creator for function and blessing. Because of sin, we were deprogrammed. You're gonna see what I mean by this programming. And our authentic way of living and our automatic response is like a heart out of rhythm. And when the heart goes out of rhythm, guess what? All the other functions in the body also goes out of rhythm. Our sin then affects our judgment and our actions, and then kills us slowly. But see, we see that because we're looking at it spiritually as just something that happens spiritually. But we have the sympathetic nervous system, which activates our fight or flight response. When we're afraid and when we're in sin, guess what? It makes your heart rate go up. And what happens when your heart rate stays at that high rate? If you don't know anything about stress or people who live in stressful environments, it weakens your heart and actually kill you. Your parasympathetic nervous system does something very similar, but it is the counterbalance to your sympathetic nervous system. It calms you down. It regulates your automatic responses, like it tells your body when to use the bathroom. It tells you that things are safe and it's okay. Sin keeps us with our sympathetic nervous system activated all the time. Sin, trauma, which is a byproduct of sin, keeps that active, which then destroys the normal functioning of the body. It keeps us from losing weight. All those things, we don't digest our food properly. Why? Because we're spending so much time being heightened and hypervigilant that we can never rest and let our bodies do those normal functions. You have sympathetic, where you have danger and stressful situations. And then you have the parasympathetic, who is supposed to help you to calm down after your response. So if you don't know how you're programmed, then it can directly affect, right, how you not only respond to but how you respond to everything. Okay, let me show you this little video clip. Hopefully it doesn't send us through 50 million commercials. All right, let's see. Tell me when my screen. Okay, can you guys see that?
Did you know that your heart has an incredible, unique intelligence unto itself, or that it has a significant influence on our perceptions, emotional experiences, and higher mental processes? And did you know that the heart can actually sense your emotional response to an event before the event has occurred? You may have instinctively felt that the heart was so much more than a blood pump, but science has actually confirmed it. Researchers discovered that the heart has its own intrinsic nervous system that sends a lot of information to the brain, affecting the way we feel, think, and perceive. In fact, the heart actually sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. Scientists refer to this as the little brain in the heart. But don't let the diminutive name fool you. The heart-brain can act independently of the brain in your head. Its neurons have long-term and short-term memory and extensive sensory capacities. The heart and brain communicate with each other in a complex dance. As we experience emotions through the day, our heart rhythm patterns tend to reflect how we're feeling. This information is monitored by the emotional centers in the brain, where they are then perceived as feelings of fear, anger, joy, appreciation, etc. When we get bogged down with stress, worry, impatience, information overload, or indecision, the heart's rhythm has a jagged and irregular pattern. The resulting disorder or incoherence in the nervous system creates noise or static that in essence causes the neurons in the brain to get out of sync, resulting in impaired mental functioning or cortical inhibition. We can feel energy drained with more mental fog, making it difficult to focus, remember things, listen deeply, and make clear decisions. However, on the upside, when we experience feelings like love, kindness, appreciation, or compassion, it creates a smooth, coherent heart rhythm pattern. This has a calming and balancing effect and creates more harmonious cooperation between the heart, brain, and hormonal system. This not only improves how we feel, but also our ability to think clearly. We can see creative solutions to problems and more easily discern intelligent choices and decisions. This is cortical facilitation. The good news is we don't have to wait until we happen to feel good to experience this uplift. We can choose to create it ourselves. Research shows that when we practice activating positive heart qualities, care, cooperation, forgiveness, etc., it has a carryover effect that increases the overall baseline of coherence in our system. So we have more resilience during stressful experiences and can more easily maintain our poise, confidence, and self-security when challenges arise. This is the intelligence of a coherent heart. We offer many free tips and techniques to.
All right. Was that like mind blown, right? So when Yah talking about this idea of authority within, Yah understands not only just how the heart functions. So this is a person who's obviously reasonably intelligent. They understand how the heart functions. I'm gonna read you this. I told you this is really funny. It's not necessarily a joke, but it's funny to me. So this is a journal article, because as I was looking at the mind-heart connection and trying to find a way to share this, I read, an article about brain-heart interactions and physiology and clinical implications, written in 2016, so it's nothing really old. And I'm going to read to you, intentionally not reading the abstract, but this part about how the heart functions. And I won't read it all, but this is a person who their jobs are to study and research the heart. The effects of sympathetic activity. The cardiac sympathetic innervation originates from a sympathetic preganglionic neuron in the upper thoracic segment of the spinal cord, which synapse with neurons S2N and the cervical and upper thoracic ganglia. Sympathetic postganglionic fibers innervate the cardiac conduction system more prominently than the working myocardium, releasing noradrenaline or norepinephrine and neuropeptide Y. Noradrenaline binds to the cardiac beta-1 adrenergic receptors, increasing intracellular levels of cyclic adenosine monophosphate. I just read 3 sentences. They're probably the hardest 3 sentences of my life, right? 3, just 3. This person, their job is to be an expert on each of these things. I had to literally, while I was reading this, literally Google, what is the thoracic ganglia? And where is the postganglionic fibers? Every single word. This is a human who knows more about the heart and its function. But we have a Yah, literally, who created the heart that this person is researching and knows how it functions and knows what happens to your nervous system when you sin or when you're not obedient or when you're not aligned to him. And somehow we don't trust him when he says, hey, don't let these things in your heart. Because he knows, like that video shows, it's going to make your heart rate spike and it's going to put your heart out of rhythm and it's going to make your brain foggy. He knows all of that. We know none of that. And most of us didn't know none of the stuff we saw until today. And we got nerve enough to be bold enough to choose how we're going to do things. Yeah, it's like, I know it down to the thoracic ganglia, what's going to happen when let's go on. When you don't do your parasympathetic preganglionic neurons, and they control your cardiac function, which are located in the medulla. If Yah talked to you like that, you'd be like, I don't know what to do. So what does he say? Circumcise your heart. You can get that, right? You can get the circumcise your heart, get your heart right with me, what it literally means, the idea of circumcise literally means to separate, right? It's a separation of the foreskin. He's like, separate that part that puts you into covenant with me back to me. Give that authority, give the reins of your heart, your mind, that connection to me so I can keep it regulated, so you can be blessed. The blessing is that nice, smooth rhythm when there's kindness. Think on these things: love, joy, peace, patience. When all these things are present, guess what? Everything is okay. He's like, so if I talk to you like this and told you what was really happening and that you're stopping the fibers and the innervate cardiac conduction system and the atrial venicular working myocardium from regulating, we would just stop. So he gives it in terms that we understand so that we can be obedient. Yah literally tells us, I'm trying to tell you what's happening. Paul does something that I think is really cool in Romans. In Romans chapter 7, Paul talks about this idea of Torah and how Torah does what we probably more than we think it does. Romans chapter 7, he starts at verse 7 and he says, Talks about the law, because the whole point is being obedient to Yah is Torah, right? That's the whole of it. So what he says, his laws, the natural order of things, you don't go against those things. When he says not to sacrifice, don't sacrifice. When he says to be obedient, be obedient. When he says to circumcise your heart, circumcise your heart. Why? Because if you don't, then you feed one part of your mind more. And if you feed disobedience, it blocks your ears. You can't hear Yah. So Paul says, people are like, says you don't keep the law. He says, what shall we say then? Is the law sin? Does the law cause this dysregulation? Does the law disrupt the authority within? Oh, Yah forbid. Nay, I had not known sin. I wouldn't even known that I was dysregulated if it hadn't been for the law. I wouldn't have even known that I had idols set up in my heart if it wouldn't have been for Torah. I wouldn't have even known that I wasn't obedient if it wouldn't have been for Torah. Then guess what? I would just be a detestable abomination to Yah. My prayers not reaching him, my life staying in disarray if it hadn't have been. He says, for I had not known lust, except the law said, thou shalt not covet. But sin, taking occasion by the commandment, wrought in me a manner of concupiscence. For without the law, sin was dead. I didn't know it. So he's saying, oh, so it's okay to just live in ignorance. No, you can die in your sin and die ignorant. He says, for I was alive without the law once, but when the commandment came, sin revived and I died, right? I knew it. He says, and the commandment which was ordained to life, I found to be unto death. Why? If I don't know it, and then I start trying to keep it, it's killing me until I understand the fullness of it. See, he says, so he goes, for sin taken occasion by commandment deceived me, but it slew me. Wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy, just and good. Was then that which is good made death unto me? Yah forbid, but sin, that it might appear sin. Until I identify it, how can I then come against it? He says, working death in me by that which is good, that sin by commandment might become exceedingly sinful. The fullness of it. He's like, I didn't even know I was doing something detestable until somebody told me it was. And so Yah is saying, you don't know me, essentially. We go back to Jeremiah 4. He's like, I need you to break up this virgin soil that has no idea, clearly, like you don't know. And he's saying, and then men, circumcise, take off the foreskin of your hearts. He's like, because see, your heart is not circumcised, your flesh is, but your actions have not made it to your heart. And if your heart doesn't respond, if your heart is not circumcised, if your heart's not aligned, you can't hear me. You can't hear me. And that is going to lead us, I told you it was a long way, the long story long. That is what leads us to what's going to be said, because what happens is you end up in what I wrote down is presumptuous. You end up as presumptuous. That means you know you're doing it. Practitioners of perversion. He's like, that's what you're going to become. And once you become presumptuous practitioners of perversion, I have to cast you away from me. I need you to circumcise your heart toward my law so that your ears can hear. If you don't hear my law, I can't hear you. And danger is coming. Danger is coming. We're going to read Jeremiah's warning in context. We saw from the beginning that they were prompted to prepare to hear and react. But instead of preparing their hearts, the soil of their hearts, and instead of circumcising their hearts, right, putting their hearts into covenant with Yah, because that's the process of circumcision, they were non-reactionary. They did the outward things. We saw it during Josiah's time, right? But they didn't do the inward work. And this killed Jeremiah because he's like, I see what's happening. So let's go to the second part of this verse. He tells them to circumcise yourselves to Yah, right? Take away the foreskins of your heart, you men of Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem. So everybody, lest my fury come like fire and burn that none can quench it because of the evil of your doings. You're doing that which is evil. He's like, you got to do it. Check this out though. Because they didn't do it, they're not going to hear any of the stuff that Jeremiah is going to say. Jeremiah is literally, his words, for the most part, outside of the remnant, are going to fall on deaf ears. Verse 5, declare ye in Judah and publish in Jerusalem and say, blow ye the trumpet in the land. Trumpet goes off, right? Everybody's supposed to hear it. But because they didn't circumcise their hearts, their ears won't hear the warning. So what he's telling them, if you do this, here's the good that'll come. He says, look, the trumpet's going to blow, cry, gather together and say, assemble yourselves and let us go into the defense cities. Let's get out of this central city and let's go off into the defense cities, which are most likely the Levitical cities, are places where people normally don't go and destroy when destruction comes. This place is going to be destroyed. We need to go off. That's the warning. You don't have to be, but you got to get out of here. And it says, now set up a standard toward Zion. Retire, stay not, for I will bring evil from the north and a great destruction. Here's your warning. You're literally hearing what's getting ready to happen. It says, the lion has come up from his thicket and the destroyer of the Gentiles is on his way. If you don't know anything about Babylon, go look at their symbology, lions with wings and, all those things. And he says, going to make the land desolate and thy city shall be laid waste without an inhabitant. For this, gird you with sackcloth and lament and howl, for the fierce anger of Yah is not turned back from us. It's like, y'all not turning? This is what's getting ready to happen. And it shall come to pass at that day, saith Yah, that the heart of the king shall perish, and the heart of the princess and the heart of the priest shall be astonished, and the prophets wonder. They don't even know what's happening. Why? Nobody hears me. I'm not talking to anybody. And what did he say before? They didn't even consider. They didn't even talk to me. They're telling you guys they've been talking to me. And when this happens, you're going to go to them and say, King, what happened? I don't know. I have no idea. And the priests are going to be like, how? We were worshiping. We were praying. We were doing service. We were circumcising babies. But the people's hearts weren't circumcised. And the prophets are going to wonder. The prophets wondering? That's like an oxymoron. The prophet should know. They are the seers. They should be able to uncover what is happening. They're not even going to. So Jeremiah sees, here's all this. And then this is Jeremiah. And he said, then said I, Yah Elohim, surely thou hast greatly deceived this people and Jerusalem, saying, ye shall have peace, whereas the soul reaches unto the sword. He's like, you put it in front of them, but they're not listening. They're not listening. He says, at that time shall it be said to the people and to Jerusalem. And it goes into like a discourse here, like kind of set aside. A dry wind of the high places in the wilderness toward the daughter of my people, not to fan nor to cleanse. Even a full wind from those places shall come unto me. Now as will I give sentence against them. Behold, he shall come up as clouds, and his chariot shall be as a whirlwind. His horses are swifter than eagles. Woe unto us, for we are spoiled. O Jerusalem, wash thine heart from wickedness, that thou mayest be saved. If you didn't hear when Jeremiah said it, Lauryn Hill said it too. That's that verse. O Jerusalem, wash thine heart from wickedness, that thou mayest be saved. How long shall thy vain thoughts lodge within thee, your emptiness? How long are you going to let that take place? For a voice declared from Dan and publishes affliction from Mount Ephraim. It went out everywhere. Nobody did not hear. Make ye mention to the nations, behold, publish against Jerusalem, that watchers come from a far country and give out their voice against the cities of Judah. As keepers of a field are they against her round about, because she hath been rebellious against me, saith Yah. Thy ways and thy doings have procured these things unto thee. You made them happen. This is thy wickedness, because it is bitter, because it reached unto your heart. My bowels, I am pained at my very heart. My heart maketh a noise in me. I cannot hold my peace. Because thou hast heard, O my soul, the sound of the trumpet, the alarm of war. Destruction upon destruction is cried, for the whole land is spoiled. Suddenly are my tents spoiled and my curtains in a moment. How long shall I see the standard and hear the sound of the trumpet? For my people is foolish. They have not known me. They are sottish children, and they have none understanding. They are wise to do evil, but to do good they have no knowledge. I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly. I beheld, and lo, there was no man, and all the birds of the heaven were fled. I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was a wilderness, and all the cities thereof were broken down, at the presence of Yah, and by his fierce anger. For thus hath Yah said, the whole land shall be desolate, yet will I not make a full end. For this shall the earth mourn, and the heavens above be black, because I have spoken it, I have purposed it, and I will not repent, neither will I turn back from it. The whole city shall flee for the noise of the horsemen and the bowmen. They shall go into thickets and climb up upon the rocks. Every city shall be forsaken, and not a man dwell therein. And when thou art spoiled, what will you do? Though you clothe yourself with crimson, and though you deck yourself with ornaments of gold, though you paint your face, right? Though you made your face up in vain, shalt thou make thyself fair? Thy lovers will despise thee, and they will seek thy life. For I've heard a voice of a woman in travail, and the anguish as of her that bringeth forth her first child. The voice of the daughter of Zion that would bewaileth herself, that spreadeth her hands, saying, woe is me now, for my soul is wearied because of murderers. Jeremiah saw it before it happened. He was a prophet. And so it pained him. He's like, Yah, let me see the whole thing from start to finish. It was terrible to him. Terrible, terrible. And all because of bitterness, rebellion. And he said, and it went to their hearts. It's not the best way to end on the Shabbat. But I really hope that as you see the full picture of it, and you see the progression of sin, that, and I wrote it down actually, because as you see the progression of it, it should cause us to know how to pray specifically, because I think sometimes we forget how to pray. And this chapter left me with, we need to pray for the circumcising of our hearts. We need to pray for our hearts to be in covenant, for our hearts to be like our nervous system, automatically responding toward good, regulating. We need to be regulated by Yah and his word, and to allow the covenant to literally come to life in us, so that it's an outward action, so that Yah can see those of us who are the remnant and those of us who are operating in this state of repentance, right? We're turning, constantly turning. And the interesting thing about the body that you saw is that it has both systems, right? It has a system that reacts to fight or flight. It has the system that is also calmed. And so what we know is, if the body can operate in this way, then when we are off course, Yah has set up for us to be put back on course. Torah has the ability to put us back on course. And the more we practice being regulated in regular life, right, the more we're regulated. The more we practice allowing Torah to regulate and to be our authority within and to guide us, guess what? The more it will happen. And we will stop warring with our flesh, and our flesh will just have to be in subjection. We can't get rid of it. In that same Romans, if you keep reading, he's like, I try to do good and I do bad, right? This flesh thing. But guess what? Now that I know that I am doing dysfunction, I can allow the Torah that now has become one in me to then put me back in check. We can now give Yah the reins of our minds, the reins of our heart, to regulate us to that when we become unstable because of our instability, Yah then uses Torah to bring us back. And that was not why they were being punished. They weren't being punished because they messed up and they got back on track. They were being punished because they became reprobate. They said, oh, we're not ever going to be right. We're going to always be like this. And we're not turning away. And you've purposed it in your heart and you've lied, but you still want to do the outward things because you want people to think you're blessed. But inwardly, you're whitewashed tombs, you're dead. We don't want to be that. So that's my prayer today. I'm going to pray and then we'll end. So I want to pray for the circumcising of our hearts. And I want you guys to, stand in agreement with me in that. Yeah, we come to you right now asking that you will remove from our hearts those teraphim, the household idols, that you will cause us to be detested and abhorred by not only the actions of the outside world and their idolatry, but by our own actions and our own abominations and the things that we hold on to. Yeah, cause us to see our rebellion as detestable, cause us to see our stubbornness and our bitterness as detestable. Yes, cause us to see anything that dysregulates us and pulls us away from you as detestable, and help us to seek function. Yeah, change our conversations, change our meditations, change how we see the actions of others, change how we see the actions of ourselves, change how we behave on a day-to-day basis, so that we can begin to see the blessing and the goodness that you have for us as you begin to regulate and set us back on course. Yeah, anything that takes away our peace, our joy, our love, our patience, yeah, remove that from us so that we can cultivate experiences in our own households that move outward into the world that are an example of you. We ask that in a world that is swiftly dying and experiencing your judgment, that you keep us safe, that you teach us how to guard and protect your word. And in doing that, you guard and protect us and our families. Yeah, we want to listen and obey. Yeah, if our hearts are hardened, yeah, plow them and make them fertile ground so that your word can rest and can grow and can bear much fruit, and that we can share from the abundance of the good that you have put into us and not from the places of darkness that the world has taken up space within us. Yeah, we ask that you will continue to cultivate us, that you will continue to make us malleable and be flexible towards your will and towards your way. Yeah, we pray for families. We pray that the blindness and the witchcraft of our rebellion and our wickedness and our sin and our stubbornness, yeah, that you remove those things and you cast them far off and allow us to see clear. Yeah, regulate our hearts so that we can receive the goodness of you from those around us, but ultimately from you. Yeah, we ask these things in your name and in your salvation. Amen. All right, that